In a development that's sending shockwaves across both Washington and Wall Street, the Department of Defense has just cut ties with several Pentagon contracts linked directly to Trump-affiliated companies, effectively halting a jaw-dropping $31 billion revenue stream. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, who had remained almost entirely silent on Trump for nearly a decade, released a statement declaring this move a necessary step to uphold institutional integrity. It's extraordinary, Buffett stepping into what many would call a political firestorm. But when billions of dollars in defense contracts and potential constitutional questions are on the line, even someone like Buffett can't just sit this out. This isn't simply about failed deals or lost revenue. It's a deeper crisis, highlighting conflicts of interest at the highest levels, exposing cracks in how the Pentagon awards contracts, and raising the question of whether a former president can continue profiting from government projects while campaigning for the White House once more. And believe me, this fallout is only getting started. Here's how it all began. Late in 2023 and early 2024, several companies with documented connections to Trump's business empire won major Pentagon contracts totaling roughly $31 billion. These weren't small projects. We're talking about critical defense logistics, secure communication systems, and infrastructure upgrades across military installations. A detailed political investigation in March 2026 revealed that at least 3 of these companies had Trump family members on their boards or held substantial equity through shell corporations. What made this even more controversial was the timing. These contracts were awarded when Trump was already the presumptive Republican nominee. That triggered immediate concerns among ethics watchdogs and congressional oversight committees. Whether it was the communications deal at Fort Bragg, the logistics contract covering 7 military bases, or the infrastructure upgrades at naval installations. These awards cemented Trump's financial entanglement with federal spending even while he campaigned for a return to the White House. For months, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee raised alarms about these conflicts. But the tipping point came when the Pentagon's Inspector General quietly launched an investigation in January 2026. What they discovered was explosive enough that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had no choice but to act. And this is where things become politically combustible. The termination of these contracts comes at a moment when Trump is solidifying his position as a Republican frontrunner. The ripple effects are immediate. Hundreds of subcontractors are scrambling to secure their portion of work. Defense projects face potential delays, and employees linked to these contracts are suddenly confronting layoffs. According to CBS News, the IG's report delivered to select congressional committees on March 15th uncovered significant irregularities in how these contracts were awarded. Everything from insider advantages to evaluation criteria, seemingly tailored to favor Trump-connected bidders. Caught squarely in the middle is Secretary Austin, whose responsibility is to safeguard the integrity of defense procurement while navigating an intensely political minefield. He is the steady hand meant to ensure the military gets the best services at fair prices. But Trump isn't the type to quietly accept decisions that hurt his financial interests. Already, he has taken to Truth Social, demanding Austin's resignation and labeling the terminations a deep state witch hunt designed to bankrupt his businesses and stop his campaign. CNN reported just hours ago that Trump accused any Republican who didn't demand Austin's firing of being a rhino trader, working for the Biden crime family. Now, to be fair, defense contracting is extraordinarily complex, and conflicts of interest have long plagued these systems under both Democratic and Republican administrations. But the direct financial ties, combined with Trump's active candidacy, create a scenario unlike anything we've seen before. By the morning of March 17th, leaked information about the terminations had reached Trump's team, and his reaction was explosive. He called Austin's decision treasonous election interference and claimed the secretary was actively trying to destroy American businesses to favor President Biden. This wasn't a private gripe. It was broadcasted publicly through Truth Social in a hastily arranged press briefing at Mar-a-Lago, sending shockwaves through the defense sector and Republican political circles alike. If Trump, the Republican frontrunner, can have his business interests cut off by a sitting administration official, what does that imply for other contractors trying to navigate relationships with the current government while preparing for a potential Trump presidency? This is not the first time Trump has demonstrated this kind of zero-tolerance approach to loyalty. Throughout his career, anyone who ceases to serve his interests becomes a target. Consider Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, Mike Pence, and Kevin McCarthy, loyal allies until they followed institutional rules or refused to bend to Trump's will, at which point they were publicly humiliated, dismissed, or politically neutralized. The pattern is clear. Loyalty must be absolute, and any deviation is met with swift and often brutal retaliation. Secretary Austin, in taking action based on the IG's report, has stepped directly into this familiar Trump dynamic. The Pentagon's IG uncovered substantial irregularities, yet Trump allies in Congress pressed the Pentagon to ignore the findings and maintain the contracts. Austin, however, decided that integrity and the law could not be compromised, issuing terminations that he knew would provoke political backlash. According to MSNBC, his formal statement stressed that the Department of Defense has a sacred duty to award contracts fairly, transparently, and according to federal law. Initially, a few Republicans expressed quiet support, or at least didn't immediately condemn Austin. Senators on the Armed Services Committee, like Roger Wicker, had already voiced concerns about conflicts of interest. It seemed the correct course of action was straightforward: follow the IG's recommendations and uphold accountability. But within hours, Trump's reaction reshaped the political landscape, with conservative media and House Republicans questioning the timing and impartiality of the decision. The consequences quickly became tangible. Stock values for affected companies dropped, subcontractors flagged potential project delays, and defense lobbyists began scrambling to respond. And then Warren Buffett entered the scene. After nearly a decade of avoiding Trump-related controversy, Buffett broke his silence, praising the Pentagon's decision as necessary to protect institutional integrity. In a statement released via Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett highlighted that allowing government contracts to become tools for personal enrichment undermines American capitalism and democracy itself. His endorsement sends a seismic signal to the financial and business community. There are ethical lines that should never be crossed, regardless of political power or campaign ambitions. Buffett's statement isn't just a gentle suggestion. It's a clear signal to the business world about where the line between profit and principle lies. Conservative commentator Larry Kudlow, who served in the Trump administration, emphasized on Fox Business that Buffett's remarks carry weight not because they're partisan, but because they reflect decades of business experience and respect for institutional stability. Essentially, when Buffett speaks about ethics in government contracts, even those within Trump's orbit, pay attention, he's reinforcing Austin's decision, signaling that the Pentagon's insistence on transparency is not an attack on a candidate, but a defense of the system itself. George Conway, the conservative attorney and vocal Trump critic, echoed this point on MSNBC, reminding viewers that IG offices are staffed by career professionals across administrations, and their recommendations aren't made lightly. When the Inspector General flags irregularities serious enough to justify contract termination and referral to the Justice Department, that evidence is substantial. And that's the core of the showdown. Austin acted by the book, following the IG's findings, consulting Pentagon legal counsel, and deciding that these contracts could not continue without risking federal violations. His approach was procedural and deliberate, leaving no room for political convenience. Yet Trump interprets it entirely differently. To him, ethics, oversight, and institutional integrity are secondary to personal loyalty and financial gain. By referring the contracts to the Justice Department for potential criminal investigation, Austin escalated the situation. Trump views this as political persecution, a weaponization of government authority meant to target him. On Truth Social, he described Austin as the most corrupt defense secretary in American history, calling for impeachment and framing the action as a betrayal of his business empire and campaign. This clash isn't simply about Trump's billions or his public image. It raises fundamental questions about how the Pentagon operates, the protections built into government contracting, and the standards expected of candidates for the highest office. The political consequences are immediate. Trump now has to defend why his companies received such massive contracts while he was running for president. and why they were terminated due to irregularities. Polling, like the recent YouGov survey, shows that 62% of Americans, including a significant portion of Republicans, believe that former presidents should be barred from holding government contracts while seeking office. That's a serious reputational blow for Trump, who relies on his image as a successful businessman to bolster his campaign narrative and claim persecution by the deep state. Democrats are poised to use this story as a powerful weapon. They'll argue that Trump prioritizes personal profit over ethics, highlighting the IG's findings as evidence that he treats government service as a means for enrichment rather than public service. References to the $31 billion contract terminations will be omnipresent, from campaign ads to debates to speeches, casting Trump's business dealings in a highly unfavorable light. And this isn't only a political story, it's a structural one. Austin's decision illustrates a rare moment of accountability in defense procurement, showing that even candidates for the presidency aren't above scrutiny. Traditionally, concerns about conflicts of interest in defense contracting focused on established corporations and lobbying influence, but by acting against Trump-connected companies, Austin has demonstrated that no one is exempt from oversight. Of course, Trump and his allies are attacking the system itself. Conservative media has amplified claims of bias, questioning the motives of the IG and Pentagon officials. House Republicans are probing the IG's office, and some senators are worried about political fallout if they fail to publicly denounce Austin's action. Yet Austin likely felt he had no other choice. Ignoring the IG's findings while Trump campaigned could have irreversibly damaged the Pentagon's credibility. If the rules can be ignored for political figures, oversight mechanisms become meaningless, and future Inspector General reports would lose authority. Austin's move underscores the importance of impartial governance, reminding us that even those seeking the highest office must play by the rules. At the heart of this story lies a constitutional principle: the prohibition against government officials personally profiting from contracts they control or influence. While these clauses technically apply to sitting officials rather than candidates, the principle is clear. The founders designed these rules to prevent corruption and self-dealing, recognizing that human nature often inclines towards self-interest. Oversight functions, ethical guidelines, and independent review offices exist to enforce this principle. Trump's continued involvement in his businesses while running for office, combined with the Pentagon contracts, violates the spirit, if not the letter, of these protections. If these terminations are reversed or reinstated under a Trump administration, it could set a dangerous precedent, effectively allowing presidential candidates to leverage government resources for personal profit without fear of consequence. This isn't only about Trump or Austin, it's about the integrity of American democracy and defense procurement for years to come. Each time norms are broken or oversight institutions undermined, the baseline for acceptable behavior shifts. If presidential candidates can openly profit from government contracts, and if Inspector General recommendations can be dismissed as politically inconvenient, then the system itself begins to erode. Future presidents could manipulate contracts, sidestep oversight, and attack inspectors without consequence. The actions taken today set a precedent that shapes how government functions tomorrow. Looking ahead, the implications for the upcoming elections are significant. We're still 8 months away from November, but the narrative that's being shaped right now will have a lasting impact on voter perception. Trump's legal battles, combined with the loss of billions in terminated contracts and public criticism from figures like Warren Buffett, create a potent story of ethical failure that opponents will use relentlessly. Independent voters, in particular, are likely to take notice. Most Americans respect the role of Inspector General offices, understanding that they exist to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, even if they don't always agree with every finding. These offices are designed to operate independently, free from political influence, and their credibility matters deeply to the public. For Democrats, this is an opportunity to position themselves as champions of accountability and integrity. They can argue that Trump treats government service as a vehicle for personal gain rather than public good. Every mention of the $31 billion Pentagon contract terminations reinforces that narrative, providing a concrete example of how ethical lapses can have real-world consequences. These contract issues will likely appear in ads, debates, and speeches throughout the election cycle, creating a recurring challenge for Trump's campaign. Every time he touts his business acumen or attacks Biden on economic issues, opponents can counter with a stark reality. He was profiting from Pentagon contracts while campaigning for president, and those contracts were terminated due to irregularities. Meanwhile, the story has implications for defense procurement itself. Bipartisan concerns about the revolving door between Pentagon officials and defense contractors have existed for years, but they rarely captured national attention in such a dramatic way. By terminating these contracts, Austin's demonstrated that oversight can apply even to high-profile figures. The precedent is clear. No one is exempt from scrutiny, and the Inspector General's recommendations must be taken seriously. Yet Trump and his allies are actively undermining that system, attacking the IG, Pentagon procurement offices, and Austin personally. By framing these actions as politically motivated, they are attempting to delegitimize independent oversight, which could have long-term consequences for government accountability. Austin's stance shows the difficulty of navigating institutional responsibility under extreme political pressure. By following the IG's findings, consulting legal counsel, and refusing to prioritize political convenience over the law, he has upheld the principle that government contracts are not tools for personal gain. Had he ignored the findings or delayed action, the Pentagon's credibility would have been compromised. Future IG reports could have been dismissed as politically inconvenient, and high-profile candidates could have enjoyed preferential treatment, eroding the foundation of oversight and fairness. Austin's choice highlights the importance of principled leadership, especially in institutions where impartiality and accountability are critical. The constitutional questions surrounding this story are equally important. The founders designed safeguards to prevent financial entanglement between personal business interests and government authority. Even though these clauses specifically target sitting officials, the principle is broadly applicable. Trump's simultaneous campaign for office and involvement in government contracts pushes the boundaries of this principle, creating a scenario that could undermine public trust in both the electoral process and federal procurement systems. If the IG's findings are overturned or ignored, it sets a precedent allowing future candidates to manipulate contracts for personal gain, weakening oversight and accountability. This case isn't just about Trump or the Pentagon. It's about systemic norms that protect democracy and ensure fairness. Each time oversight is challenged or ethics are ignored, the baseline for acceptable behavior shifts. If candidates can profit openly from government contracts while pursuing office, and if Inspector General recommendations can be dismissed, the safeguards designed to prevent corruption begin to fail. Future presidents could exploit these gaps, manipulating contracts, ignoring oversight, or attacking inspectors without consequence. The actions taken in this moment will define what is considered acceptable in American governance for years to come. At the center of this storm is the clash between political power, financial interest, and institutional integrity. Austin has acted as a gatekeeper, enforcing transparency and fairness in the face of extraordinary pressure. Trump, on the other hand, has shown that personal profit and loyalty are non-negotiable priorities. This collision sets the stage for ongoing legal battles, political skirmishes, and public debate over the proper role of oversight in government. The stakes are enormous. The integrity of our procurement system, the strength of democratic norms, and the accountability of elected and appointed officials are all on the line. Even as the Justice Department begins its review, congressional investigations ramp up, and Trump's legal team threatens to challenge the terminations. Warren Buffett's statement has emboldened other business leaders and Republicans who might have otherwise stayed silent. His endorsement signals that institutional integrity matters above political allegiance, encouraging those in positions of influence to uphold principles over partisanship. The coming weeks will be critical. How Congress, the public, and the courts respond will shape not only the outcome of these specific contracts, but the broader standards for ethical governance and oversight for years to come. As the weeks unfold, the political and legal stakes continue to escalate. Trump's reaction to Austin's actions has been predictably aggressive, painting the terminations and DOJ referral as an attack on his personal empire and campaign. Yet the IG's report and Austin's decision are grounded in law and principle, not politics. The evidence points to serious irregularities in how contracts were awarded, with Trump-affiliated companies potentially benefiting from insider knowledge and tailored evaluation criteria. By choosing to follow the facts rather than bow to political pressure, Austin has set a precedent that accountability should take priority over partisan loyalty. But for Trump, this isn't about precedent. It's about power, control, and money. The consequences for the defense industry are immediate and severe. Stock prices for the companies tied to these contracts have plummeted, wiping out hundreds of millions in market value overnight. Subcontractors are scrambling to adjust timelines, budget forecasts, and workforce allocations, creating a ripple effect across multiple military projects. Lobbyists and legal teams are working overtime, trying to navigate the sudden uncertainty while also preparing for the political battle that is now spilling into the public domain. The broader lesson here is clear. Oversight matters, and ignoring it can create cascading chaos that touches everyone connected to these contracts, from top executives to entry-level employees. Meanwhile, the ethical questions at the core of this story are impossible to ignore. The Constitution's emoluments clauses were designed to prevent government officials from profiting from their positions. And while the language targets sitting officials, the spirit applies to candidates as well. Trump's financial involvement while campaigning blurs these lines, raising concerns that extend far beyond one individual or one administration. If these contracts were allowed to continue, it would essentially signal that presidential candidates can manipulate government spending for personal gain with impunity, eroding the integrity of our political administrative systems. That makes this story much bigger than dollars lost. It's about protecting the rules that underpin American democracy itself. From a political perspective, Trump's aggressive defense strategy is aimed at turning the narrative around. By portraying the IG, Austin, and the Justice Department as politically motivated enemies, he seeks to rally his base and frame himself as a victim of an establishment conspiracy. Conservative media outlets have picked up this framing, questioning timing, motives, and alleged coordination with Biden's campaign, even without concrete evidence. Some Republican lawmakers are now hesitant to voice support for Austin, fearing primary challenges or political backlash, illustrating how deeply the battle over perception has influenced Capitol Hill. Meanwhile, Democrats see a clear path to capitalize on the story. They can use it to underscore systemic conflicts of interest, highlight Trump's willingness to profit from government while running for office, and position themselves as champions of accountability and fairness. The Justice Department review adds another layer of complexity. Austin has formally referred the contracts for potential criminal investigation, asking the DOJ to evaluate violations of federal procurement statutes, conflict of interest laws, and potential fraud. This step not only raises the stakes for Trump personally, but also signals that oversight agencies are willing to take legal action when misconduct is identified, regardless of political status. For the public, this provides tangible evidence that checks and balances still function even when confronted with powerful individuals who might believe themselves exempt. It's a reminder that institutional integrity can prevail, but only if those in authority are willing to enforce it. Meanwhile, Warren Buffett's public support of Austin's decision has shifted the conversation in the financial community. Buffett's reputation for long-term thinking, integrity, and adherence to principle lends credibility to the idea that government contracts must remain above politics. Conservative voices, such as former Trump officials and financial commentators, have started echoing this sentiment, creating an unusual coalition of business-minded and principled figures defending the Inspector General's findings. This broadens the debate beyond politics, highlighting the ethical standards necessary to protect institutional trust and ensure fairness in federal contracting. At the core, this situation illustrates a larger systemic challenge, balancing political power with accountability. Oversight institutions, including the Pentagon's Procurement Office and the Inspector General, exist to ensure that government contracts are awarded fairly, transparently, and in compliance with law. When high-profile figures like Trump challenge these standards, they test the strength of the system itself. Austin's willingness to act by the book, even under intense political pressure, demonstrates the importance of principled leadership in maintaining institutional credibility. Ignoring these checks would set a dangerous precedent, signaling that personal and political interests can override oversight mechanisms designed to protect the public. As this story unfolds, one thing becomes clear. The stakes extend far beyond Trump, Austin, or any individual contract. They touch on how democratic norms are upheld, how oversight agencies enforce the law, and whether future presidential candidates will be allowed to profit from government contracts with impunity. The ripple effects of this case will influence defense procurement, electoral ethics, and public trust for years to come. And while Trump continues to fight, leveraging media, loyal allies, and social platforms to shape the narrative, the institutional response led by Austin and validated by figures like Buffett demonstrates that accountability still matters, even in the face of political firestorms. As the Justice Department review moves forward and congressional investigations ramp up, the coming weeks are set to define the trajectory not only of Trump's political fortunes, but of federal oversight itself. Legal battles loom, with Trump's team already threatening lawsuits to reinstate the contracts, while institutional guardians like Austin and the IG stand firm in defense of accountability. Warren Buffett's rare and pointed statement has empowered business leaders and cautious Republicans alike, signaling that ethics and principle matter more than political expediency. The message is clear. No matter how powerful a candidate may be, oversight mechanisms are in place to prevent corruption, and those mechanisms will be defended. The broader implications extend far beyond a single administration. This case illustrates how ethical standards, oversight offices, and constitutional safeguards operate in practice when confronted by concentrated political and financial power. Each decision Austin has made reinforces the principle that government contracts cannot be tools for personal enrichment, and that no individual, regardless of status, should be above scrutiny. If the IG's findings were dismissed or the contracts reinstated without proper evaluation, it would signal to future candidates that exploiting government resources for personal gain carries little risk. That would weaken public trust, erode democratic norms, and normalize self-dealing at the highest levels of government. From a political standpoint, Democrats are poised to leverage this story to emphasize integrity, transparency, and accountability in government, contrasting those principles with Trump's demonstrated willingness to blur the line between public service and personal profit. Meanwhile, independent voters and even some moderate Republicans are likely to question whether the rules truly apply equally to everyone. The $31 billion in contract terminations, combined with Buffett's endorsement of institutional integrity, has created a compelling narrative that transcends party lines and puts ethics at the center of public discourse. For the defense industry, the implications are immediate and tangible. The abrupt halt of contracts affects not only Trump-connected companies, but also subcontractors, employees, and projects across multiple military installations. Financial markets are already responding to the disruption, underscoring the tangible stakes tied to oversight and compliance. This story illustrates how closely ethics, governance, and economics intersect in practice, and how critical it is for public institutions to maintain credibility and fairness even under immense political pressure. In conclusion, what we're witnessing is more than a business dispute or political clash. It's a test of democratic norms, institutional oversight, and the ethical foundations that underpin American governance. The Pentagon's $31 billion contract terminations, Warren Buffett's rare intervention, and Austin's principled stance collectively demonstrate that oversight and accountability remain essential pillars of our system. The outcome of this showdown will not only influence Trump's immediate political and financial trajectory, but also set precedents for how future candidates, contractors, and government officials navigate the delicate balance between power, profit, and principle.